Hello, Melissa Beck. All right. We see some people starting to roll in and join us this morning. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you, everyone, for hopping on today. We will get started here in just a few minutes. So, as you're hopping on, why don't you go ahead and type into the chat box where you are joining us from today? Your presenter and I are both located in Apex, North Carolina, just outside of Raleigh. So, where are you joining us from today?
Seattle, all the way across the country from us. Manhattan, Kansas. The Little Apple, as they call it, right? Newport News, Virginia. Pasco, Washington. Yes, the Little Apple. Okay. Frederick, Maryland. Jill, I was looking at your email address and seeing it was Montgomery County, Maryland, or Montgomery County, and I was wondering, is it Montgomery County, Maryland? That is one of the places that I grew up in Silver Spring. So glad to have another Marylander here.
San Diego, back where our headquarters are.
Yes. Okay, so you work for Montgomery County and live in Frederick. Yes. MoCo. It's nice to have that connection. I went to Blair High School and Tacoma Park Middle School, and Piney Branch Elementary. So I don't know if you're familiar with any of those schools.
All right, I want to encourage you all to continue to type in. We're going to give everyone just a few more seconds to make sure everyone is hopping on okay, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, everybody, we have just passed the hour, so we'll go ahead and kick this off today and get started. So let's get rolling. All right. So hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We appreciate you spending the next hour with us. My name is Amanda, and I will be your host. So if there's any technical assistance that you need, you can type those requests into the chat box, and just be sure to address that request to all panelists so that we can on the back end. And if you're watching the recording of this webinar, you can email any requests or technical support that you need to support@kit.org. Okay, let's see here. We just want to make sure everyone is aware of how to use this platform, so we encourage you to go through the chat box to respond to the presenters' requests and to engage with one another and share ideas and resources. And if you have any content-related questions, those can be entered into our Q&A box, which we will address at the end of the webinar. All right, and today's webinar is the second part in our COVID series, and it's on getting back into our groove, connecting and reconnecting with staff. And your presenter today is Anna Luther. Anna is KIT's curriculum director, and she has over 18 years of experience supporting community inclusion. And she's a very proud UNC Chapel Hill alumni. And with that, I am now excited to turn it over to Anna. Oh, Anna, I think your mic is muted. No, for some reason I can't hear you. Is anyone else having a hard time hearing Anna? Okay. Sorry, everyone. Okay, great. Let's see what we can troubleshoot here. Everything was working great when we were testing. So of course, as soon as we go live, something has to go wrong. Let's see. Okay, so while we're waiting to go through and try and figure out what's going on here, I'm hearing some feedback here of trying to unplug a headset and replug it back in. So we'll give that a shot. But for those of you who hopped on a little late, why don't you go ahead and type into the chat box where you're joining us from today?
Is this better?
There we go.
Okay, of course I pushed a button. My stepdad calls my mom the button lady, and so perhaps I have inherited that
Inherited.
trait as well. So we will try again. Let me share here and get us going.
Great. All right, while we're getting that set, thank you for joining us from Londonderry, New Hampshire, and someone from Ramona, California, and San Diego County. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you for your patience. And we are ready to get started now.
Yes, let me just make sure you're seeing that screen properly.
Yes.
Okay. Fabulous. All right. Thank you all so much for your patience with me and my button pushing. Hopefully this is now working and everybody can hear. And if not, please definitely type that into the chat box and let us know if I have still not done something 100% right here. Okay, so a couple of things I want to say before we go full on into content. One is I want to let you know that this webinar is designed specifically for our non-military community. So KIT does a lot of work with the military, with the Department of Defense in their childcare and youth programs. We have a whole series that is dedicated just for you if any of you are part of our military family. And so I want you to know that those are going to be on Tuesdays, and there will have been a very similar but different version of this particular webinar that we presented last week, and that recording is available in our online learning center. So if there's anybody that is part of our military family, you have an OLC account, then I would love for you to hop on to the recording of that particular webinar. It's called Creating an Emotionally Safe Space for Staff. And the reason being is that that one is the one that has connected CEUs to it, and it will go onto your transcript and do all of those things that you will need to do to show your professional development hours for those military requirements. And again, that one is really tailored to your programs, whereas this one is more tailored to our non-military programs that we support. So just want to say that. And also for those of you who may not be as familiar with KIT, we're the national leader in disability inclusion and behavior support, and we have a plethora of services that we provide to programs all over the world. We have national partnerships with the Boys and Girls Clubs of America and the National After School Association. And so if you are at all interested in learning more about what it is that KIT does and working more with us, or us coming and supporting your program, we would love to hear from you. There's a contact us section of our website there at kit.org that you can absolutely jump on and send us a message, and we will connect with you. We also do have an online store where you can access much more of our content that we have available to you. And so you can see the link there that it's kit.learnupon.com/store. So check that out if you're interested in more. And then I also want to let you know about a free service that we have that goes through just another few days through June 30th. And I know that there's some talk behind the scenes about whether we may continue doing that. I'm not quite sure yet what the decision is, but I do want to let you know. So this is actually for families, for parents who, like all of us, are sort of in a different situation than maybe we ever expected to be in, where we have children at home, maybe maybe we're working on homeschooling. For a lot of us, the school year is over. But still, what might be going on in those home environments where families are now together maybe much more of the time than they were before? So we have some qualified specialists who are just waiting to talk with you and support the families. So you can feel free to pass this information on to any of the families that you support in your communities and let them know that this is available to them for just another few days through the end of June. And we'll certainly let you know if anything changes on that date. Okay, so let's really jump in here. So what I'd like to do is show a poll. And let me launch this. I'm curious about what your current level of operations are. And let us know what's happening in your program right now so we can have a picture painted of where you are in terms of, are you open at all? And which children are you serving? So I see some answers coming in. All right. Give another few seconds here for everybody to enter, and it looks like we've got a good amount of folks who have voted. So I'm going to share the results. And it looks like most programs that you're with are opened with decreased participant numbers. And then we also have a good amount that are closed but preparing to reopen. And I know a lot of programs, especially summer programs right now, are probably in that same boat where maybe you delayed opening summer camp and may just be getting ready to open. And so I see in the chat box too, the serving limited numbers of participants from our local community. Yeah, so those numbers might be less than what you are used to. And I think that that is what we're seeing really across the board as well. Okay, so thanks so much for letting us know. I also just want to make one note as we are going through the webinar. I will be, as Amanda mentioned, asking you to respond to some things in the chat box. When you're responding in the chat box, please go ahead and select from the drop-down menu to send it to all panelists and attendees. That way we can all chat with each other. And it's also a great place to put any resources that you have that you want to share with everybody. So feel free to keep that conversation going. All right, I'm going to stop sharing. And here we go. Okay, so our learning objectives for today will be to explain how a trusting relationship with your staff impacts their job performance. And then and if you're not open yet, we'll still make this work. Describe a supportive response to a COVID-related staff member concern that incorporates one of the strategies that we're going to talk about today, known as connect and redirect. So if you are not yet open, maybe be thinking, have any staff come to you yet about some of their concerns, or are you hearing things in the community? Maybe you are friends with somebody who works in another program that is open and you're hearing some of the things that they're concerned about as well. So, okay. So another poll, and this is where you'll get a chance to reflect on some of those concerns. I'll open this one up for you. Go to our next poll here. All right. So I am curious to know, as you're thinking about reopening, as you are starting to reopen, what is your most pressing COVID-related concern? I want to also preface this by saying that I recognize that right now, COVID is a big part of what's on our minds, but there's other things that are on people's minds too. So I'm going to ask us to be in just the COVID lane as we're responding to this particular question. So what is something that is most concerning to you right now? All right, again, we've got lots of folks voting. So I'm going to leave this open for another few moments so everybody who wants to can. All right, I'm going to share our results. And I totally understand where you're coming from here, is enforcing safety precautions to keep staff and children healthy. I mean, this is a whole new routine, a whole new way of being that we got going on in programs. And so there's just a lot of newness of how are we going to be able to do this effectively. You may be having lots of questions from staff members. You may be having lots of questions from families. Today, our focus will be on staff and maybe their concerns. And then next week, we'll also be talking about some of those family-related concerns even more in depth. I see also there's some concerns about children's behavior in response to those new rituals and routines. Yeah, change is hard. Things are, things will evolve. And I see Crystal has said that also concerned about the behaviors you're in week 2. Okay, so you are just getting back up off the ground. And so you're right in the mix of seeing how folks, families, staff, children are responding to those new rituals and routines. Okay, thank you all for that. So we are absolutely in a time of uncertainty. Again, we now have multiple sort of global crises happening. So there's this layer upon layer between COVID, which really started in earnest a few months ago when things started shutting down. Now we've got civil unrest that we are watching every day. And so we just have a lot of uncertainty happening in our lives. And with uncertainty brings some challenges, some things that make it hard to predict what's going to happen. So we get fear, anxiety. Maybe we feel helpless about the situation. We could be very distractible. When you've got really big, heavy things in your mind, it can be so much harder to focus on the things that you typically would to sort of get through your day to day. And then that may also lead to a lack of motivation. Maybe it just feels really hard to get out of bed. And when all of these things are swirling around inside of our head, it makes it hard for us to do our jobs well. And you all have very important jobs of caring for our children and being leaders in those programs that are caring for our children. So I want to actually get us started with a little meditation. I hope it's something that you might be able to use in your own life. Maybe it's something that you incorporate into the program as a way to help us and the staff feel a sense of that emotional safety. Okay, so we're going to try something here. In just a minute, I'm going to read to you a meditation, so some guided imagery, and we're going to play some music to go along with it. Again, let us know if that music is not working for you. So I'm going to read you a meditation from a book called Spinning Inward, and it is a book, here it is, that has been a part of my life since I was 7 years old. It turns out my mother was an early adopter of meditation and mindfulness for children back in the 1980s, because as a child who experienced, and as an adult who continues to experience, anxiety and definitely childhood depression, and due to circumstances in my life, I struggled with some things. And one of the things that my mom and I would do is we had a ritual where at bedtime, I got to choose something for us to do together. It was part of us building our relationship and making it better. And one of my choices of things that I could do was have my mom read one of these guided meditations in this book. And so it is something that has stuck with me for over 30 years. And so I wanted to share this with you. And again, hope that it helps to center us for our time together today. And maybe even is something that you want to carry with you in your personal life or in your program. So I'm going to read this meditation, which is called Sanctuary. So if you ever are interested in this book, you'll know exactly which one it is. All right, so let's see if our music will work for us. Close your eyes and begin to focus your attention on your breath, watching the air move in and out of your nostrils. Give yourself the suggestion that with each exhalation, your body becomes more and more relaxed. Now imagine that you are moving through time and space to a place that is a sanctuary for you. The sanctuary is safe, simple, and beautiful. It may be located in nature, in the hills or near the sea. It may be in your room at home, or any place of your own choosing where you feel safe and secure. Go there now and experience the colors, textures, smells, sounds, tastes, and how your body feels in this place. You'll have 1 minute of clock time, equal to all the time you need to relax in the sanctuary. Now it's time to return here, bringing with you the sense of safety and security that you have experienced in your sanctuary. In a moment, I'll count to 5. Open your eyes at the count of 5, feeling relaxed and alert. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. How was that for everybody? Oh, let me see if I can stop our music here. I hope that that brought you some peace and again, maybe some centering as we are beginning our deep dive into this topic. If there's anybody who's interested, I'm going to open my chat box. If you are interested in telling us where your sanctuary was, feel free to do so. It is 100% optional. I just always love to get a sense of where people go for their sanctuary. This is one sanctuary for me. This picture here was picture that we took on a trip of ours, and so that kind of image brings me some peace. So feel free to chat that if you would like to, and we will keep going. So our focus for today is how you as a leader can support staff through any of the ongoing changes that are going to be happening, phases of reopening. You know, we don't know what the future is going to bring, but what we do know are the fundamentals to supporting people. So that's where our focus is going to be today. How maybe in a world where it might feel like we're losing control, the things that we know, how can we use those in order to support the staff members in your programs? All right, so yet another poll. I'm poll happy today here. So I want to start with a concept that we really use quite a bit at KIT as a framework for how we do a lot of our work and how we provide training and consultation. So what I would like to do is see just where you folks are in terms of the support pyramid. This is an anonymous poll. So let us know when I say support pyramid, what comes to your mind of these choices? And if it's something else, you could put it in the chat box. All right, we've got a great mix here. This is fabulous. All right, I'm going to share our results. So equally, have folks who it sounds familiar to and you live and breathe the pyramid, great. And a couple of folks who are not as familiar with it. Okay, so this is wonderful. Thank you all. So I'm going to end that one. So let's talk a little bit about the pyramid so we can all get on the same page, because we're going to use this concept of the pyramid in part of our session here today as we move through. So the KIT pyramid of support, which is the image that you see on your screen, is based on many other pyramids. There are many pyramid models, and many of them are used to think about, or the ones that we sort of have adapted, are the ones that we use to think about how best to support children and youth, especially when it comes to supporting regulated and positively functional behavior, which is something I totally just made up because we know that like behavior is functional. And so we want to make sure that it's sort of that positive behavior. So with all pyramids, we start from the bottom up because a pyramid is only as strong as its foundation. With a cracked or a weak foundation, the whole thing is going to crumble. And for us, the base of our pyramid is relationships. So that's this foundational level here. And that's really where we're spending the bulk of our time today. We're talking about the relationships between children and adults. We're talking about the relationships among children. It could be among the staff, between leadership and staff, between the parents and leaders, between parents and staff. So all of those relationships are the foundation of our support pyramid. Everything is built on having trusting, positive relationships. Our next level is the environment, so our environmental supports. And this not only includes your physical environment, but we also think here about our sensory and even our emotional environment in some ways. We want to make sure, of course, that we have a well-resourced environment, that there's lots of activities that are developmentally appropriate for children and youth to engage in, but we also want to make sure we have predictable routines and expectations and have that consistency. And so that's all part of our environmental supports. Our next level is targeted, and these are some specific social emotional practices that you might embed into your program. So potentially, I know a lot of programs are moving to putting mindfulness and yoga and meditation into your programs. This is a great example of a social emotional practice that you can embed into your program that would be considered a targeted support. And then at the top of our pyramid, we have the intensive level. So these are our individualized supports for children who need accommodations to be successful. And why the pyramid is so helpful to me sometimes, not only of thinking about sort of this laying the foundation and working our way up, but what research has shown us is that when we use this framework, 95% of children are very well supported when it comes to strong, the three bottom layers being the strongest. So as long as those three bottom layers of the pyramid are very strong, then the majority of the children and youth in your program are going to be well supported. And then another 5% are going to need those intensive top level of the pyramid accommodations. All right. So maybe you're thinking like, aren't we supposed to be talking about staff here? All you're doing is talking about kids. Yes, I know you are right about that. The thing that I love about the pyramid is that it applies to so many parts of our lives, including when we're thinking about supporting staff, because it starts with relationships. We always need to start with our relationships. So think about your home life, right? What happens if you have a strange relationship with your partner, with your child, with your roommate, maybe even yourself? Yeah. And then our environments. I have this friend who often rearranges the furniture in her house just to create this sense of refresh and like a new beginning. So having that environment that supports us in our work. And I'm guessing there's probably things that you embed into your daily routine to cope with challenges, those targeted supports. Maybe it's exercise. For me, it's meditation. And then there's probably times where you also need something that's really tailored to your specific needs and individualized support. One of my personal accommodations is color coding. I color code my calendar. I need that because I need to visually differentiate all of the different things that are going on in my day in order to stay organized. And I'm sure some of my colleagues could tell you stories about when I have lost my pens, then, so I can no longer color code. So the pyramid really is a tool that's valuable for all parts of our lives. And so we are really honing in on that relationship piece today because we need those trusting and strong relationships now really more than ever. Okay, so now the brain, another one of my favorite topics. I already mentioned that I'm a child of the 80s, so I had to pull out an 80s pop culture reference for you. This is your brain. This is your brain on uncertainty and stress. When we're in stressful situations, and for some staff, they may feel like they're currently in a perpetual state of stress, our brains release a hormone called cortisol, which is also called the stress hormone. So what cortisol does is that it helps fire up the survival functions in our brain, the things that we need to defend ourselves against threats. The problem with that is when we're in a situation where we need to be thinking, it also shuts that part of our brain down. So we no longer have really good access to being able to pay really good attention to things, to impulse control, to being able to think logically and rationally through problems. So if we are in this perpetual state of stress and we've got this cortisol pumping through our brains and it's firing up that survival instinct of, maybe you've heard that fight, flight, freeze, or surrender, right? If we're in a fight, flight, or freeze situation for so much of our day, it's going to be really hard to think rationally and be able to support children really well. So what do? Well, this is your brain on trust. We take away that barbed wire that's cutting us off. And what's funny is that I had never really thought about the true definition of trust before. We use that word all the time, but what does it actually mean? So I had to look up the definition, which is our belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something. Trust is something that we know develops over time as we have more experiences with someone, and they either prove or disprove that they're reliable and that we can depend on them. And so the great thing is that when we are around people who we trust, it actually lowers our stress response, meaning less cortisol in the brain. And when that happens, of course, now we've got more access to what's happening in the front of our brain, of that thinking and reasoning and logic and impulse control, all those things that are really necessary to respond to children, to go with the flow, and to be able to get through our day without worrying about any potential threats. Okay, so let's bring it all together. We've got the pyramid, which is the foundation, right? So we've got that foundational level of the pyramid, those trusting relationships. We know that trust helps the brain function more effectively. And so when we put those things together, then we can create a trusting organization when we understand what that means. And there's been a lot of research that's been done on high trust companies. And what that research has found is that employees that are part of high trust companies feel 74% less stress, take 13% fewer sick days, are 76% more engaged in their work, experience 40% less burnout, have 106% more energy at work, and something that I think is extra important right now is this idea of 41% less depersonalization of their colleagues. And what this means is that we have a better ability to understand somebody else's point of view, to have empathy. So think about that right now. When we depersonalize somebody, it means that we kind of stop viewing them as maybe an equal. Maybe we don't view them as being as good as us. When we step away from that, when we are in a high trust organization, we can actually allow colleagues to have more empathy and more understanding of each other. So I think that that can make a huge difference, again, especially right now. All right, so now I'm going to turn it over to you, and we're going to open up the chat box, and I'm going to ask, how does trust between leaders and staff improve staff job performance? I'll give you a moment to start typing. And I am looking for my chat box, everybody, but it's struggling to pop up on my screen here. So if folks are responding, Amanda, do you mind reading out some of those answers?
Sure, no problem. Okay, so the question was, how does trust between leaders and staff improve staff's job performance? And we have a lot of good information coming in here. Let's see. Staff feel more confident and secure. Absolutely. Staff that trust their leaders are more eager to do more for them and do it well. Very true.
Very true. Yeah, if you know that your leader is there for you, then the staff member is going to know that you have their back. And we're actually going to talk about that here in a minute. So thank you for bringing that one up.
Trust can open conversation about challenges in the workplace instead of fostering resentment.
Yes, if you are willing to open up and have that conversation, I think that comes back to maybe that depersonalization piece too. So if we back down from that, we're able to have an organization that really cultivates that open dialogue, then that can make a huge difference.
And staff feel more motivated, supported, and successful in their work.
Absolutely. And again, another thing that we're going to talk about here in just a moment. So that is perfect.
It makes it so much easier to work as a team, but it also establishes a sense of comfort so that staff feel comfortable coming to their workplace leaders in a time of need.
Yeah, that's safety. So if you trust that, again, a leader is cultivating this sense of trust in your organization and that is happening, then you are going to feel that emotional safety, physical safety in coming to work every day. All right, so I'm going to keep on going. Thank you so much, Amanda. Those were great answers. So what can we do to cultivate trust? So you've already kind of hit the nail on the head a little bit, but let's talk through some specific strategies that that researchers who really look at trusting organizations say kind of have your biggest bang for your buck, I guess you would say. So one is to be vulnerable. So you have to give trust to get trust. So being vulnerable and recognizing when you need help and asking for it, that can show your staff that you trust them and value what they have to offer. Recognizing excellence. I mean, who doesn't like to be recognized when they've done something well, or, they've worked really hard on something and it went according to plan? And so we have a KIT staff member who was telling us about when she was a director at a YMCA program, she would give out paper plate awards. So anyone who saw another staff member going above and beyond could come into the director's office. There was a stack of paper plates, some markers, which nowadays I guess we'll have to sanitize between use, but have that there and draw something and kind of create this award that they would then hand out at staff meetings. And actually another one of our staff members was saying she got something like this when she was a camp counselor and still has it today. So that can be very meaningful. Sharing information. Having information helps us feel like we know what's going on, and that can give us that sense of certainty in this uncertain time. I know a challenge is that things are changing daily in this COVID era. And so keeping people informed, we have to kind of have a balance between bombarding people with too many messages, but making sure that we're giving them the messages at the right time. So something that we've done at KIT, which I encourage you to consider, is to come up with a communication schedule. And that's worked really well for us, where our leaders have come up with a very consistent schedule so we know when to expect information. So we do staff meetings on Mondays. We went from having them monthly to having them weekly, and we're kind of slowing that down a little bit more again. We have a Wednesday email that comes out, which gives us COVID-related information that we might need for our work. We had a long established Thursday internal check-in with each other that has moved from checking in about sort of our projects and our daily work to checking in about how we're doing with our self-care and how we're doing emotionally. And then we also have had a long-standing Friday email that has continued. That is something that's more broad. It goes out to our board members, it goes out to key stakeholders, and it kind of gives a sense of what we're doing together. So having that schedule is really nice because we know exactly when to expect information to happen. The next is to give discretion And what goes along with this is to helping staff to set goals to work towards. So these go hand in hand. So can we come up with a project with a special initiative that a staff member might want to take a leadership role in, giving them that opportunity to have a leadership role. If it's not something that's an initiative across the organization, because sometimes there aren't a lot of those opportunities available, what can we do to help staff really think about being the leader of their group, of their huddle, of the classroom that they're working with, and having some goals there? Because what researchers have also found is that people say that they have their best days at work when they're making progress towards a goal. And I will confess that I'm a list person. I'm probably sounding very type A, and that is very true. I love lists. So when I can check that off and know that I accomplished something, it feels really good. The next is to show a genuine interest. And while this might seem incredibly obvious, it is something that can go a long way and isn't always done well. You know, we get caught up in our day-to-day also. And so being able to really take a moment, which we'll talk about in a minute, to be present and be there and show a genuine interest, then that can be a very vital part of building trust. And then finally, facilitating growth. I know that for some people in the youth development field, it's very temporary work. You have seasonal employees, right? But even so, if we can find a way to facilitate their growth and invest in them, then we are going to see stronger relationships. We're going to see better programs. All right, and I promise this is our last poll of our session. This is an anonymous poll again. This is just to do some self-reflection on some of the things that you would like to enhance as you're thinking about cultivating trust. So these are things that you may already be doing. Maybe there's something you want to add to it, or maybe there's one of these that you do really, really well, but you heard another one that speaks to you that you want to try to incorporate into your work. So I see a lot coming in. I'm recognizing excellence. Yeah, it can, sometimes we kind of think like, oh, everybody knows they're doing a good job. But when you can really recognize that in a meaningful way, I think it feels good to people. So that seems to be the number one answer here, is recognizing excellence and then also facilitating growth. So let's see if I can share our results there. Excellent. Thank you all. All right, so let's do this. Okay. So we've kind of moved through this idea of how we cultivate trust and why it's so important. But this is real life. And in a high trust organization, even in a high trust organization, and maybe especially in a high trust organization, folks are going to have challenges. They're going to come to you as a leader with concerns. And so we need to be prepared to respond to them in a way that is like a brain-friendly response to it, right? Because we know so much of the brain science has to do with trust. So we're going to talk about a brain-friendly way that we can respond when a staff member comes to us with a concern. We're going to think about it in the context of COVID, but this can apply across the board as well. And the strategy that we're going to talk about, or the framework we're going to talk about, is called Connect and Redirect. Connect and Redirect is something that we actually often use with children, but we are going to apply it to adults. So essentially what Connect and Redirect does is to help us capitalize on trusting relationships so that we can then help somebody solve a problem. And Dr. Dan Siegel is the person who coined this term of Connect and Redirect, and he's written several books on supporting children by understanding brain science. One of my favorites is No Drama Discipline. So this strategy works first by calming that stress response that somebody might be having when they have a concern or a worry about somebody, so that they can access those reasoning skills and then be able to more effectively solve the problem. And you'll see on the screen the 6 steps in Connect and Redirect, and you don't necessarily have to go in the order that we're going to go through. But the important thing is to always start with connection before we move on to redirection. So we're going to talk through the steps. We're going to talk about some strategies and some cautions for being able to use each step effectively. Our first step is to approach calmly. And in this situation, when we talk about this with children, a lot of times we are actually going to them when they're maybe having some concerning or unsafe behavior. When we're in a situation with staff, they might be coming to us in our office. Or, you know, I can imagine a scenario in like a summer camp setting where if you're the leader, you're kind of moving through the different areas of the program. So that staff member might take that opportunity when they see you to say, hey, I want to talk about something. You know, in cases like that, we need to make sure that we're communicating in a place that you can really have a real conversation, and sometimes that can't happen out in the open. But if you're in a good physical space to have that conversation, you know, one of the things that you might want to try is sort of making this shift, because what can happen, as we talked about just a moment ago, is that if we've got something going on in our minds about something that we're concerned about or something that we're trying to get done in that moment, it can be really hard to be very supportive of a staff member in addressing their concern. So we need to kind of make this shift to being present in order to show that genuine interest in what that staff member's concern is. So you might want to do things like figuring out how to wrap up something so that you can be present with that person. That's something that I actually use very often with my husband is, hey, I need to finish doing this and then we can talk because I really want to be able to hear you. So being able to make that shift. Sometimes you might also maybe just take a deep breath. One of our KIT colleagues, as we've been talking about self-care, this was something that was new to me. It was called 4-7-8 breathing, and I found it very useful, where you inhale, breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold it for 7 seconds, and then you exhale, breathe out for 8 seconds. And there's some research that shows that having a longer exhale than inhale is actually very calming to your system. So let's look at this example. I want to hear about your concerns. I'll call someone to give you a quick break and we can go to my office. So that's how you might be able to wrap up, to take that moment, to be able to be present. Depending on what you've got going on in your life, maybe you've got to do some of these rituals before you even interact with anybody at work that day. And so perhaps for you, it's having that cup of coffee in silence before you speak to anybody, taking that extra moment in your car to maybe listen to your favorite song before you walk in the building. Something that's maybe meditative that's going to help you be able to be in a good frame of mind to help somebody else solve a problem. So our next step is to acknowledge, and acknowledging lets somebody know that they are heard. And again, this goes back to what we just talked about with those cultivating trust strategies, is that when you acknowledge somebody, you're letting them know, I value what you have to say. I hear what you have to say. I'm not kind of dismissing it, but I'm really taking it in, and I care about you and want to hear you. So you might say things like, it sounds like, or I can see how, or I understand that. With this one, again, something, my husband and I work a lot on our communication. So one of the things that I personally have to be careful of is my tone when I say some of these things, because they can come off snarky if we're not careful. Like, well, yeah, I understand where you might be coming from. We really have to take that genuine tone. So I want to make a disclaimer about this example that I'm going to kind of use as a example as we carry through the rest here, is that I'm using the example of kids wearing masks in a program. I recognize that that is not the case for every program. I know that each program has their own policies and protocols about what we're doing about mask wearing. And I'm also not recommending that everybody wear a mask, because I am not a health expert, a public health expert. So, go back to your American Camp Association. If you're part of that group, they've got some great things on their website too, where they've done some town halls with some public health experts to guide you through. Go to the local health department, CDC, but I'm just going to use this as our example as we're kind of going through. All right, so what if a staff member was to say to you, this whole mask thing is not working, the kids will not keep them on? To acknowledge and validate that experience, you might say something like, I can understand that it's difficult to keep reminding the kids to keep their masks on. Right? So we're just acknowledging that. Yep, that's tough. And probably not how you want to spend most of your day. The next piece of our connection is to describe or clarify what we saw, what was said, and then later on we'll move into helping to name the emotions. So when we use this with children, a lot of times we're describing their actual behavior, and you may not necessarily need to do that with adults. You might have to say something, wow, you used a loud voice to respond to your co-counselor. But in our example, what we might want to do is clarify to get a better understanding of what's going on and where that concern is coming from. So we might say something like, what's the hardest part about this situation? The thing about this step, and as we're clarifying though, is that staff might still be in the mode where they need to vent and to get things out. They might not be ready to kind of slide into redirection and problem solving yet. And if that's the case, then that's okay. Let them get it out. Just keep acknowledging where they're coming from, and that will help them hopefully be able to, again, kind of diffuse the situation a little bit in their minds to be able to access that thinking part of their brain better. We can also use the next piece of this of helping to name the emotion to continue that connection, continue that calming that stress response in the brain so that we are ready to move into redirection. I would say my word of caution here is that our job is not to make assumptions or label people's feelings for them. Our goal really is to help somebody recognize what they're feeling so they can name it to tame it. And that's another one of Dr. Dan Siegel's phrases, is name it to tame it. So here is a helpful tool that you can use to think about naming it to tame it, to think about naming emotions. And it's called the Mood Meter. It was developed by the Yale Center on Emotional Intelligence. And again, they've got a whole sort of training around the Mood Meter. The Mood Meter now, they also have a Mood Meter app that they have developed. I think it's like a 99-cent app, so it's not 100% free. But the thing about using a mood meter, if you want to use it, and I'll explain it here in just a second, is that this is not a tool that you would pull out in the middle of a stressful situation. This is something that you would have introduced in a staff training or something like that, that it's a tool that you're going to be using, because when we're in that stressful situation, to try to take in more information to learn something new may not be very easy. So as you look at this, you probably know that I love this thing because it's color-coded. But the 4 quadrants have a very specific meaning and some emotions attached to them. So the red quadrant is high energy and low pleasantness. So this might be things like fear, frustration, feeling shocked and restless. Then we've got our yellow, which is our high energy and high pleasantness. So festive, lively, proud, inspired. Then we have blue, which is low energy and low pleasantness. So this is maybe you're tired, you're disappointed about something, you're feeling hopeless and pessimistic. Then green is low energy but high pleasantness. So this is when you're feeling at ease and secure and balanced and fulfilled. So it's a very sort of evenly keeled emotion in that green quadrant. So if this is something that you've already introduced to staff, then it might be something that you can, again, have sort of like a version of this that you even create as a staff together to bring out in a situation where you're trying to help somebody name those feelings. So if we go back to our example, you might say something like, it sounds like you're somewhere in the red. Is that right? So again, we're not naming their feelings for them. We're giving them an opportunity to kind of visualize maybe what it is that they're feeling and to name it to be able to help them move forward. Okay, so then we get to move to redirection. Typically what happens is that when somebody is able to name that emotion, they're ready to start working into problem solving. And as we start here, we want to fall back on our expectations to help facilitate that problem solving. Now, my word of caution with this one is to not use our expectations as a threat or a weapon. So this is not the time that we say, well, you know, if you can't comply, I don't know where that leaves us. Or if you can't get the kids to comply with the rules, that's a problem. That's not where we go with this. What we want to do is maybe have some time to reflect on our expectations in general. Are they too rigid? Are they too lax? Are they just right? Right now, we live in a time where expectations around health and safety may change. There may be a lot of personal feelings about what does keep us safe. That varies from person to person. And there are some expectations that you are not going to be able to change at all. It's just sort of going to be the way it is. But what I want to challenge you to do is think about where that gray or wiggle room does live. Ask yourself, what is the end goal here? What is the outcome we are going for as we think about what we're trying to help staff do? Again, remember, this is about problem solving, right? So what is our end goal here? So in our example, we might say, our goal is to encourage the youth to wear their mask as much as possible. We also know that this is a change for them and a different expectation than we've ever had before. So again, you're doing some acknowledging, but you're also reminding in a very neutral way why it is we have this expectation. Okay. And then finally, we get to our last step here, which is to offer support. And when we're offering support, we want to give choices. Sometimes the idea of offering choices, especially if it's in response to trying to help staff or even kids or youth meet expectations, seems kind of counterintuitive. Like, how can I give a choice about an expectation? This is the rule, right? Again, I want to challenge you. Where is that wiggle room? How can I start from a place of yes instead of a place of no, not possible? So what if we take a step back and think about, well, what is possible? What are the feasible choices given our program structure, given what's currently going on, and that will still allow us to meet the expectations? So again, you're thinking about what is the end goal. So I'll give you a kid example from my house. My daughter, Caroline, is 4, and any routine, honestly, any routine of trying to get out the door is very difficult. I mentioned I am type A. She does not move at my pace, and that is a challenge for me. So we came up with this thing where we call it her 5. So it's the 5 things that are her responsibility in terms of getting ready. And things like getting dressed, using the potty, washing your hands, brushing your teeth, brushing your hair. Well, in my head, the way a routine should go is you do your 5 and then you go eat breakfast. That doesn't work for my daughter. But you know what? What is the end goal here? My end goal for her is to successfully get out of the house so I can take her to her childcare. That is the end goal. As long as we meet that end goal, we can go in whatever order, and I'm trying to get better at allowing that to happen. So it worked really well today. Not yesterday, but today. So that's really what it comes down to, is where's that wiggle room? What is the end goal? Can I find a way to still meet the end goal, even if it's not the exact same path that I originally thought was going to be the way to do it? So let's look back at our example here. And I also want to make the point that we might not have all the answers, and that's okay. Problem solving does not have to be one-sided. It is a collaborative thing. So even if you don't give a solution to something, being able to, we talked about opening up that dialogue, can really help spark the brain and start those ideas flowing. It's about helping that person get out of that survival mode so they can use that part of their brain. So in our example, I'm wondering how well we prepared the kids for wearing a mask all day. What if we came up with some activities to teach them about the importance of wearing a mask? How does that sound? So here we are offering something. We're doing some reflections and saying, maybe we didn't prepare everybody enough for what this was going to be like. Is there another way that we can still meet this goal and do it in a way that works within our program structure? Okay, so I'm going to turn it back over to you in the chat box. I'm going to ask you to do a few things here, so hang with me. So one is that I know, again, many of you are not open yet, so kind of think hypothetically here. Think of a staff member with a COVID-related concern. So if this hasn't happened in real life with you yet, where somebody has come to you with a concern, thinking about those concerns that we did in the poll at the beginning, what might that look like? So think about one of those concerns. Then think about which connect or redirect strategy you want to use or you wish that you had used to respond to that concern and why, and kind of type that up into the chat box. So you can type a very brief description of what the concern was. You know, the staff said, I can't keep up with the amount of cleaning that's required, how you wish that you had responded, or if that's something that you're worried about, how you will respond using connect and redirect, and why, especially why, you think that connect and redirect strategy is going to help in this situation. Okay, and I want to put up, reminder of what those connect and redirect steps are. And let's see if my chat box is working again. It sort of keeps popping up in and out. So Amanda, I might need your support with this one again.
Okay, I'll let you know when I see something pop up.
Thanks. I know this is a little bit to type, so I'm going to give you a minute to type all that in. So what are some of those concerns that have either come to you already from staff or that you are worried about, like we talked about at the beginning? And if you've had the experience where a staff member has come to you with a concern, think about which connect or redirect strategy you wished you had used to respond and why. Why would that have helped enhance that situation? Why would that have helped to maybe solve the problem a little bit differently? And again, if you haven't had that experience yet because your program's not open, thinking about what concerns may arise and what has resonated with you so far and what you've heard through Connect and Redirect that may be helpful in solving and helping somebody problem solve. And if you're interested in typing in sort of what maybe resonated with you the most, then that's great too.
There is someone who's typed in about they resonated with acknowledging and offering support as a good strategy.
Yeah, it's so easy, and these are things that require practice. It is easy to hear a concern and hear a challenge, and especially potentially if it's maybe something you've heard many times before. So maybe you have a lot of staff members who are coming to you about masks, or a lot of staff members who are coming to you about cleaning, and you feel like, I don't have any good answers for you. I don't know what else to tell you. It can be really hard to kind of step into that mode of acknowledging, but acknowledging is sometimes kind of half the battle here. Acknowledging and letting people know that they are heard a lot of times can sort of diffuse a situation, can help somebody come out of that stress response to be able to think a little bit more logically through something. Oh, Amanda, I got it back. I don't know how that happened, but here it popped up.
Oh, good. I was
Oh,
just going to
good.
tell you one came
Yes.
in.
So thank you, Crystal. Okay. So today I had to address a staff who continues to skip the walkie-talkie protocol and leaves her room to get supplies. Yeah. So she is an emotional reactor. I understand that. So I had to be very careful with how I approached her, praising first the great thing she had done, starting with strengths, excellent, and then addressing the issue and sort of reviewing the importance of their policy and asking for input. So you're using that communicating expectations, right? So you're communicating expectations, starting with the thing that you saw that went well. So using that sort of calm approach, I think that's part of calm approach, and then being able to use your expectations and communicate that in a way where we're not using it as a threat or anything, but you're really helping her to understand why we're doing things the way we're doing. Thank you. So another one, staff are hesitant to ask children to wear masks. I think it might be best to acknowledge and then remind them why it's important. Maybe come up with some ideas to give kids a break in a safe way. Yeah, absolutely. So if a staff member is somebody who is sort of struggling with the idea of a mask and is maybe getting uncomfortable in theirs, the thought of asking a child to wear one too might feel a little bit uncomfortable. So being able to acknowledge where that's coming from, and again, looking at those expectations and then thinking about what are some of those feasible choices that you can make in your program. Okay, thanks so much, everybody. All right, so we've done it. We've made it through our learning objectives. We talked about the pyramid and how we start with that foundational level in our relationships. We talked about the brain and why it's so important to calm that stress response in the brain. And then we talked through a brain-friendly way to be able to help people do that and solve problems, which is through connect and redirect, all through the lens of trying to help resolve a COVID-related staff member concern. So I just want to close with this. The heart is the first feature of working minds. Remember, it always starts with those relationships. We do have some resources and references for you if you're interested in learning more. And I know that Amanda will mention this too, but we will be sending out an email with the recording link for this, and you will have the copy of the slide note handout as well. So you'll be able to have that as your resources. And so I will hand it over to Amanda.
Great, thank you so much, Anna. And as Anna stated, we have entered officially our Q&A time. So this is the time for you to enter your questions that you have into the chat box. You can do, normally we would say the Q&A, but since we're caught up with chat box, it's okay to enter it there as well. And if you're watching the recording and you have questions, you can send those questions to support@kit.org, and we'll be sure to follow up with a response. Okay, and I'm looking through here. I'm seeing some feedback, but thank you very much for the feedback. I don't see any questions coming through quite yet, so I'll go through a little bit more information for you. As Anna said, there will be an email sent out afterwards that will include the recording link in the handout for today's webinar, so keep an eye out for that. And we hope that you'll join us next time for the third part in this series when we talk about the family program, and that will be next Thursday at 1 Eastern, 11 Pacific. No, 10 Pacific, excuse me. That math thing. Okay, and we also want to make sure you're aware of the other services that Kids Included Together provides that you can take advantage of. We have our online learning center where we provide a lot of online training, and we have lots of great free digital tools and resources within that online learning center and our website as well. And we also have different packages and things we can offer with developing policy within your programs, and as well as one-to-one coaching. And we have an inclusion support center where you can call and speak with a specialist. I believe Anna even addressed that we have a parent-specific support center that we're opening for the next few days at least. And so it's a great way to get one-on-one support that you may need to help support the children in your program. And there are lots of other different ways that we'd love to accommodate and be flexible with what your needs are. So just reach out to us and let us know how we can help you grow. And in the meantime, we would also love to stay in touch with you in a more social manner. So here are the links to all of our social media platforms.
And can I mention our, we actually last night, if you're watching this live, if you're watching the recording, it was on Wednesday, June the 24th. We did a Facebook Live conversation that is available. That recording is available on our Facebook page. It was about race and equality and talking with children and youth in your programs about race and Black Lives Matter movement. And it was incredibly powerful. It was 4 of our colleagues, of our KIT trainers, who facilitated that conversation. They shared their personal stories and trusted us all with their personal stories, and also offered ideas for things to be an ally, and as well as how to address some of these ongoing questions that are probably going to come up in your programs with children and youth. So if you want to check out the replay of that, then you can do that at the KIT Facebook page.
Thank you, Anna. All right, and I'm looking through. I do not see any other questions that have come through, so I believe it is safe to go ahead and wrap it up for today. But again, we want to thank you all for joining us and taking time out of your day to dive into this topic. And we hope that you're taking away some helpful tips and resources to continue this process, whether you're in the planning stage or you're right in the middle of it. We hope that you're taking away something that's going to be beneficial for helping you figure out how to make this work. And just remember that we're always here for you as a partner and a resource. So please let us know how we can assist you. And again, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Anna, for leading us. And we look forward to seeing you all next week. Have a great day, everyone.